Elena Vasilieva, a lady who is a huge inspiration for me.
Well, I'm both. I'm a model and a photographer at once. Showcasing what the brands are about, what they represent, what they stand for, but in a creative way. Fashion, but fashion in a sense of design, not really outfits or looks or anything like that. And they said, oh, we'd like to do a first collaboration together. So it's about the handbags the iconic handbags. And I think it's been almost 7 years now that I work with Chanel. I am very selective. It's very beautiful, very valuable things that when you look at them, they make you feel something. I know it's there, and maybe you know it's there. And this is what makes it interesting. They invite you into that world of Gabrielle Chanel. I mean, never in my life have I thought that would be me going to a show. My days are crazy. Extremely busy. Said, oh, even the team from Paris saw your pictures. And I was like, oh my goodness, These are small details, but they sort of make up a much bigger picture at the end of the day.
Hello, everyone. Today we're filming the second episode of video podcast. And our today's guest is Elena Vasilieva, a lady who is a huge inspiration for me. And a person who has a very, very specific, very beautiful aesthetic and approach to visual in general. So yeah, it's a great honor, Elena, that you agreed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And hi, everyone.
Of course. I have some questions. First of all, I wanted to ask you, how did you start with your beautiful blog? What was the beginning of it, the starting point?
It was so long ago, I can't even remember that well anymore. I think back 2010. So what, 14 years now? God,
Wow.
that's long. God.
Yeah.
Anyway, 2010. I think the very first blogs on blogspot.com, I remember precisely, or WordPress, whatever it was, the platforms. They happened around 2007, I think. And I wasn't even aware of any of those at the moment, but somebody introduced me to Susie Bubble. Susie Lowe. Somebody showed me her blog and said, oh, look at her, she's really good at showcasing young designers, and she talks about new brands a lot. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And she was posting quite a few posts every day. And I was like, oh, wow, that's captivating. That's something that I was really interested in, because I was a lot into fashion, but fashion in a sense of design, not really outfits or looks or anything like that. So I found this really inspiring, and it was something very new to me. And I thought, oh, okay, if she's doing it, maybe I'll give it a go. But I had no idea how to go about it, so I just posted every now and then things that I worked on, because at that point I was working as a designer. So I had my own collections for about 3 years. I think I did that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I was in Brussels at the point, and that was a way for me to sort of showcase what I was doing. And then I think from then on, things evolved quite quickly, and outfit blogs started happening, and people were posting what they were wearing, and then there were a lot more of them. And I think there were platforms that would sort of put together all the blogs that you follow, and then you can see, what's going on. And I think from then on, that was the very starting point. But of course, back then, it looked very much different from what it is now.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so that's how it all began, but there was a very long and slow and gradual evolution process as to where I am now, because at the beginning I had no idea how to photograph things, like what I was doing. My fashion brand, it didn't happen because I had the first baby, and I just thought, okay, I'll take a break and I'll get back to it later. But then I didn't. It just didn't feel natural to me anymore. But something else felt more inspiring, which was working with brands and showcasing, I want to say products, but it's I think it's the wrong word for it. It's really showcasing what the brands are about, what they represent, what they stand for, but in a creative way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gotten into photography from that point on, and I learned a lot on my own. I just was trying and testing things out, and it happened somehow. It just sort of got me to where I am now.
How do you actually select the brands you're working with? Is it gut feeling, or you have some criteria?
I am very selective.
Yeah, no, that's why.
No, I want to sound arrogant about this because I personally prefer to work with fewer brands, because that way I am able to build a relationship with a brand. And once I do that, once there is a nice relationship and we work on something continuously, so it's not just a one-off project and then we forget and forget about each other and we part ways. When there is this long ongoing relationship, we get to know each other on a different level, and that gives me so much inspiration, and then I'm able to create a much better story about a brand, a much better digital visual. And this is something that I strongly stand by, and that's why, as I said, I rather work with much fewer brands, and I sort of try to keep that circle of brands very, very close. So, I mean, of course, I do get requests from time to time from brands asking me to photograph an outfit with their product or create a digital story, but I sort of sit down and I think about it, and then I go, okay, is this something that resonates with me? Does that resonate with my personal aesthetic? Mm-hmm. And as much as I want to help, say, a young brand out and to put their product out there and say, oh, look, that's a great product, if it doesn't feel like my personal style or like my aesthetic, I would have to say, I'm sorry, but I can't work on that with you, maybe some other time. Or so that's my way of going about things with brands.
I want to say that it's really precious, and that's what I experienced as well working with you, that you have like a special connection on really another level, and people can feel it as well, you cannot hide it.
That's why I like it. Like, I would really like to get to know brand first, like to know their story, to know their DNA, what they're about, who's the designer. Because if I simply receive a product and I look at it and I'm like, okay, there it is, it's a pair of shoes or a bag or something else, I can't relate to it on a level that I can create a digital story that sort of translates all my feelings and all my like what I get from that product, when I see it,
yeah.
the emotions. I can't translate it into digital format if I don't know the brand so well. Of course, if I like it so much, but it's a new brand, I would take time and I research, and I would go online and read as much as possible to get to know them, and hoping that from then on there's going to be a relationship with that brand.
And building like the whole picture around the brand as well.
Yeah.
And what I experienced with you as well, that me as an owner, sometimes you don't really know what you're doing, you're doing this because it's like unconsciously, it just goes through you. And then when another person can really relate to it and like translate it in their own words, like the way how you translate it, it even gives me some more information about my own brand, because like you experience it in a different way, but also not on the surface, it's not vague. It's really, really deep. It's like, I don't know, it's somehow like philosophical aspects of the brand are showing through your blog.
I often take my time, when I have an agreement or an arrangement with a brand to photograph a story, and I can never be ready in a day or two. I take time, and very often I have that piece sitting on my countertop and I just look at it. Like, I go about my daily stuff. I don't know, I'm cooking, cleaning, doing whatever I do around the house, but I sort of keep my eye on that. And subconsciously, I'm like, okay, this is what I feel when I look at it in my daily life. This is the kind of emotion that it causes me to have. And then I'm like, okay, now I sort of get it. And from that point on, I start creating a story in my mind. I often sketch at first, so I just sit down, I have a pad with paper, and I'm like, okay, that first image is going to be this. That image is going to be that. Okay, it doesn't always translate into a story as it is, as I've drawn it, but it still gives me some sort of a plan. And I do like to plan things out before I start photographing, before I start putting together the images. And I often say to myself, okay, that plan is 50-50, so it's half of the job. And of course, things can evolve from there on. I don't sort of adhere to it strictly, but I like to have some kind of foundation before I proceed with anything. And that makes sense to me. And then after I photographed, I sit down, I look at the images, and I try to piece them together so they sort of make sense when they're viewed by someone one after another. And it takes time, and I enjoy that. I enjoy the process, but this is only possible if I know the brand really well. Or at least if I go from my internal feeling, like I kind of let myself relax, not stress about it, and I just let things flow, and then it happens.
Wow, it's like a really artist movement, I think. It's like creative process.
I just like to keep it very, very personal at the same time. And I think that's why I hope and I believe it stands out in a way from the rest.
100% sure.
But it's not always easy. At times I just have to let it be for a moment or even forget about it for a week, and I'm like, okay, you know, because inspiration doesn't come that easily. Sometimes you really just need to let things go or let it go slowly.
To give up, yeah.
And then one day you're like, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's it. I know what I'm doing today. So I just brought my stuff, my camera and all the props, and then we start shooting.
I also had one sort of personal question. How does your normal day look like? What is your routine?
My days are crazy. They're extremely busy. That's why, like, when I have to photograph something, I allocate myself like an hour of time, and I just sort of squeeze everything into that hour. And whatever I don't manage to do, I'm like, okay, that's done, because I have so much. With the kids, you have to be really organized, and you have to have the routine, because if you don't, at least for me, it doesn't work any other way. And I've learned this over the years, that things really need to happen precisely when every hour, every day, it's just, you need to know what you're doing and what you're about, because if you just let go of one thing, everything goes a mess. What my day looks like, to give an example, well, I never go to bed later than 10:30. I try to do 10 o'clock because I wake up at 5 usually.
Oh my God.
5:30 if I'm tired. I know it sounds crazy and I don't want to pose about this, but it's just, if I don't do this, I don't get anything done during the day. So I wake up, shower, get ready. Kids are sleeping usually till 7. My husband's also asleep. So weekend or not, so it's 5:30, say around 6 something, I'm ready and I go for a walk. I go either for a run or for a walk. A walk will usually takes me about 40 minutes, maybe around half an hour. I do that. And that grounds me a lot. It's just that time on my own. I go to a park, like rain, snow, whatever. I do it. Often I just don't feel like doing it, but I do it every day. And that gives me a lot of energy for the day. And it's my own time. It's me time. It's quiet. It's calm. Nobody's running around. Nobody's like saying, mommy, give me this.
I want something from you.
Yeah, so this is that. And my family doesn't mind this because they're asleep, so they don't really miss me. And by the time I'm back, it's around 7. So I get the kids up and then I get them ready for school and prepare breakfast. I get something ready for them for a lot of their lunches at school. Then I try to do like household stuff. I squeeze in the emails that I need to reply to, and I see if that day I'm shooting something or not, if I'm editing pictures, if anything that I just normally have a list of things that I have to manage to do before 3 o'clock, before I have to go pick them up. And after 3, it got really crazy because then I have to bring them to all the activities, to all the ballet classes, drawing classes, anything, you name it. We have it all for 3 kids.
So impressive, really.
It gets really busy. And then quick dinner, then they go to bed. And then the next day it's just the same thing over and over again, and you just get used to it. It's sometimes I just want to lie down on the couch and not move at all.
Yeah, don't do anything.
But then I'm like, okay, I gotta make dinner, get up, let's go. It's busy. But at the same time, I feel like it keeps me sane, because the more busy I am, the more stuff I can get done.
More organized you
get. Yeah, because you become very organized and you know exactly by the minute what you're supposed to be doing at what point of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it works for me. I can never let go. I cannot relax and be just like, oh, that will get done by itself, and something else will happen, or somebody else will do it for me. I just don't have the luxury to do this. I'm always focused on what the day is about. Every day is pretty much the same.
But probably that's why you're saying like present, because you really have to be concentrated, like each hour you have.
Yeah.
You are in the moment, because you cannot like lose any time, on fears or like, I don't know, doubts.
Yeah, no, like I think you're right. And at the same time, when I'm going about my daily life and I do all these household things or gardening or anything else, at the back of my head, I always have that current project that I'm working on. And I'm sort of like thinking about it and thinking of ways I can put together the story and the way I'm going to photograph things. And that way, my brain is kind of not always just focused on this. And I don't get tired of, being uninspired or being not motivated. I'm constantly busy, but then when moment comes and I have to photograph, I already know what I'm doing. That's why I just quickly go, done. 1 hour, ready. But then, of course, the editing takes a lot of it as well. Often I just, I have the pictures on my camera and they sit there for weeks because I just have no time to get to, to the editing part. Because that's, you have to do the selection, you have to edit every image that you've picked, you have to put the story together. But then again, this is me time, I enjoy doing this, and whenever I have a moment to do this, this is just my relaxing moment, and this is when I feel like I'm doing something for myself, not just being a mom, and
Yeah, beautiful, really.
Oh, I don't know, it's tiring, but
I can imagine, but
I wouldn't have it any other way. But it is crazy. It is hectic, and it is crazy. It's a really busy lifestyle. But I'm not complaining.
You're doing great.
I have nothing to complain about.
Good to hear. What I also wanted to ask you about, like your experience with working with different brands, and sometimes we don't see the full picture because we only see like what
the
you
images,
post, for example.
The very edited picture.
Exactly. But I'm really curious what is happening like behind the picture, and what was maybe were the most recognizable, the most memorable experiences you had with the brands.
Okay, just from the top of my head, let's see. Well, working with different brands, I mean, just to start with, of course, it's a different experience depending on the brand you're working with. And I think the most memorable...
You don't have to choose one. You can just share what what comes to your mind.
I can't even like point one. Let me think. Most memorable brands. Oh, the big ones that I worked with, like Chanel, for instance. This is always just out of this world experience. I mean, never in my life have I thought that would be me going to a show or like doing things with Chanel, and then at the bottom I would say, oh, this post is created in collaboration with Chanel. I never even dreamt of this. I just did my stuff, and like I was taking pictures. I was trying to put as much creativity into what I did. And then just one day I get an email and they say, oh, we'd like to invite you for lunch. And I'm like, what?
Wow,
where am I going? Who is inviting me? I mean, it was quite shocking to read that kind of email, but in a really pleasant and really surprising way. But I was like, sitting in front of my computer, and I was like, why am I being invited for lunch? Like, what is happening? And I think from then on, I was like, when I went for that lunch, it was really, I didn't know what to expect. I was like I wasn't a bit nervous. I was quite nervous, I think. And I got there, and the team that I met, they were really down to earth and really calm and really relaxed about things. And they're like, oh, we'd like to introduce you to the brand and see if we can potentially work together. And I was still like, is it me talking to you? I was really,
Wow.
I was dazed. I was not like, I couldn't believe this was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that it was something that I was striving to do, that it was my aspiration. I was just doing my thing. I never looked for this. I never researched how do I get in touch with that brand or this brand. I was just, kind of, okay, I'm doing my stuff and, putting it out there for everyone to discuss and criticize, or I don't know what. And it happened, and it was lovely. I felt very warm, welcoming feeling. And then they reached out to me after that lunch, well, a while later, and they said, oh, we'd like to do a first collaboration together. So it's about the handbags that, the iconic handbags. And I'm like, okay, what am I to do, And so it wasn't a brief, but, an email, they said, oh, you can just be yourself and like photograph a story about Chanel handbags. And I was like, okay, what do I do? It was
Yeah,
scared.
it's huge. It's really huge.
I was scared. I was nervous, and I didn't know how to go about it. But then I just sat down and I told myself, okay, just be you. Just do what you do. I mean, you can't be someone else, and you can't like do more than you know. So just do what you can. And I received the delivery, and there was a big box with press loan pieces that came from Chanel showroom from Paris. And I was like,
chicken skin.
Yeah, it was scary. So, and I had a weekend. Usually I photograph all my big projects in the weekend. That way I can have my husband help me, because, well, most of the time I use a tripod, so I shoot things myself. So I sort of know, well, I'm both. I'm a model and a photographer at once. But when I need help for some shoots outside, for instance, I ask my husband to lend me a hand, which he's not a big fan of, but he still does it. And so we were shooting this, and my second daughter was just born, so she's in the buggy, like on the side in the park, and like my older one is just running around, and I'm like shooting stuff, like people passing by, and they're like, that mom is crazy, and I'm like, with bags and stuff, yeah, and then I'm like changing behind bushes, excuse me, and I was like, okay, I'll just do my best. So I shared the story, and I was nervous as hell because I didn't know how to take it, I wasn't sure, like, if I did it good, if I did not, like, well, it was nerve-wracking. And the response was really nice, and they even said, oh, even the team from Paris saw your pictures, and I was like, oh my goodness, And I think from then on, I never expected anything, and even today, I have a delivery and I'm excited about it as if it's the first time around, It's always something new, and it's always a new story, a new narrative, and it's exciting. And I think it's been almost 7 years now that I work with Chanel. But every time I say it out loud, it just like, for me, that's like, I can't even believe my own words, but it's easy for me to calculate, because when they reached out to me, I was pregnant with my second, and she's almost 7, so I know that's the timeline, yeah. And I think working with them is very easy in a way, and they make it very easy for you, because it's not just, oh, here's a product, go take pictures. They invite you into that world of Gabrielle Chanel. They give you the background story. They give you the narrative. They explain everything to you through trips, through events. And then you're sort of so submerged into this world, and you feel like with every new product you can relate to it because you know the story behind it. Because absolutely everything that they do, it can be traced back to Mademoiselle Chanel, to her history, to her narrative, to her
heritage.
To her heritage, exactly. And that's really wonderful because that makes it that much easier for me. Like, I know, or at least I feel like every time I know where the inspiration came from, it can be traced back to things, and that's beautiful. And there were a lot of experiences, yeah, like that. I mean, over the years, there were so many beautiful experiences with them. And I really cherish every single one of them, and I remember them like so vividly. And it's nice to kind of have that timeline going, you know. It's a wonderful feeling, yeah. And every time they tell me, "Oh, you know, the Paris team have seen your work," and in a way, I feel very humbled, but also it's that sort of point of appreciation for what you do, and it kind of makes you keep going because very often I have doubts. I mean, I think everybody does. You just sit there and you stare at the screen and you're like, oh my god, what did I do? Like, these pictures do not work, like, or did I photograph it correctly? Does it express my feelings and emotions? Do people see what I see? Are they going to perceive that in the same way that sort of I do? That's hard, and it also creates a lot of vulnerability around your work. And once you put it out there, you sort of can't control it anymore because it's out there. But then there's like all these people coming at you and saying, oh, you know, that's beautiful. Oh, yeah, she kind of is like, and you know, that is not easy to do. But
it
is what it is.
Really important that
I think you get it as a creative as well.
Yeah. I think every creative person needs sort of like feedback, you know, from someone who is maybe a little bit above, or on top. Like a bigger
a little superior, probably.
Superior. And because sometimes you do stuff and not everyone will tell you something, although people are watching, they really like admire it,
but they don't have the guts to say it.
Normally people say that if they don't like something, but if they really really like it, they just really love it, but they just don't pronounce it out loud. And at some point I received some messages as well from clients, and they really tell me like, Lera, thank you for your YouTube channel or for your Telegram. And I'm like, okay, you're reading this. I'm happy that someone got, I don't know, some inspiration from it, or like.
I think it's just important to keep going.
100% sure.
No matter what. That's what my father always tells me. He's like, keep going. Keep going. Just obstacles or not, just, you know, keep the ball rolling and things will come your way. It will happen eventually. I mean, criticism or not, or people sort of not responding to your work the way you would have hoped for, doesn't matter. Just keep going. And often I forget this, but then I sort of like, oh, you know, I need to keep going. And then even inspiration comes, because there are days when you feel kind of hopeless and useless, and you're like, you know, I have no idea what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? Like, what's the reason behind it? What's the point? But then one day you just wake up and you're like, you know, and everything's clear. And then you produce that kind of work you're even proud of. And I also have this problem with what I photograph. I never like it in the moment. I never do. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to finish it, but on some level I always feel like, could have done better. And I just let go. And then if I look back at some of the pictures that I've taken, like after a month or two, after a year, I'm like, oh, actually, okay, it was not so bad. And every time I do this to myself, and I don't know why, and I'm like, oh my God, I was actually like really doing okay. Why was I so harsh on myself?
Crazy, yeah. I mean, you would never say so.
But like, very often I have this, very often. It almost never happens that I photographed something. I'm like, oh my God, I'm brilliant. Like, I'm amazing. I don't have the, I just like, I'm okay, I did my best. You know, that's my story. But, and then after some time, I don't know why, it's probably something's wrong in my head.
Yeah,
Don't know.
I don't know. I wanted to tell you that maybe that's why you're so perfect, like with
Oh
what you're
no,
doing,
please.
because you're not really considering it to be perfect. But I don't also think it's healthy. I think we really need to appreciate more what we do. I mean,
I think it's nicer though when you hear it from others, no? When others come up to you and say,
yeah,
oh, I like this, but not only I like this, but they say I like this because you made me feel this with your pictures or with your creations or with your jewelry, like, something clicked.
yeah,
And that's the most valuable feedback. That's what I feel.
yeah, likewise.
That's amazing when you get to hear things like that. And very often, as you said, people think something, but they just like, oh, somebody else will say it for me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, voice my excitement.
And maybe probably the last question, where do you get your inspiration from actually? Like how
does it come
how
about?
this picture is born, like based on what? Did you ever think like from where it comes from? I don't know, from
I think,
nature?
honestly, inspiration can come from anything. Like I literally see an orange in a supermarket and it can be inspiring to me in a way. But as I said earlier, like I constantly have that creative thinking in my head. Like my head is constantly sort of, okay, if I photograph this like with that and this kind of light, how would that turn out? And the thing is, because I'm not taught as a photographer, I just learn things by, trial and error. I experiment a lot because I don't know the rules. I don't know the proper ways of doing things. So I just kind of click and try and see how the light falls, see how objects are portrayed in a certain way, if there's shadows from behind, from the side, and I just keep trying. And that's why in my head, I'm constantly like, okay, what if I do this? What if I do that? And maybe that what inspires me. But on the other hand, I think many photographers inspire me too. I can't like say exact, if I have to go into names, I don't know if I can point anyone out, but just when I look at beautiful photographs, I mean, there's so much online nowadays. It's just basically social media is filled with, it's filled with anything, but it is also filled with very beautiful, very valuable things that when you look at them, they make you feel something. And when I see photographs like this, they sort of imprinted in my brain, and then I remember them. I remember them very clearly in my head. And then I think these kind of works, they also serve as inspiration for me. But other than that, just stuff in the daily life, anything, really. It can be music, it can be a scent, it can be an experience that I've had, a place that I've been to, really anything. I think when we're like in a bubble at home, it gets a little harder, but once you get out there, you experience new things, you meet different people. I'm always sort of recharged when I meet someone who is on the same level with me, in terms of creativity, and if we're thinking alike, and then I'm like, oh yes, that person gets me, like, and then I get home and I'm so inspired, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to finally photograph that project that's been sitting at the back of my shelf for a while, and I'm gonna get to it, and then it really flows. It happens organically, it happens naturally, and I never push it. I always wait for it to sort of come to me. It just goes, and I don't just sit on it and kind of be like, okay, what like, how do I go about it? I think that's the way maybe to go about things, especially in creative.
It's really, really inspiring. I mean, that's what I learned from you. Every time I'm meeting you, I'm like, okay, Elena has this, and this, and she perceives the world like that. Probably I can also like use it in my life and also.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I really learned.
I'm happy to be helpful.
And what you told, have you seen the film? It's calls Perfect Days.
No, I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
You should really watch it.
I need to find 2 hours of time
Yeah. But it flies. It's really, I mean,
Yeah,
although it's really like Japanese film, which is quite calm,
yeah, yeah.
not too many stuff is going on there. But it's also, I had the same feeling you just told me now. You just somehow see a person and you know that you experience the same things. Like
Hmm.
I, for example, can just walk in the park and see a tree and a
Yeah,
beautiful light, and I
yeah,
can just stay there
yeah.
and like,
Stare at it.
yeah, stare or even crying because it's so beautiful, you
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah.
really just touches me. And it's like a little bit spoiler about a person who is a cleaner in Japan, in Tokyo,
Yeah.
and he just repeats the same routine every day, but he really admires these small, tiny shadow and lights and moments, and you see that he's smiling. It's a great actor as well. And at some point, I just realized that okay, this is happening to me, and it's completely normal. And there are people as well who experience the world the same way.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think it's really important. Also, it gives me the feeling of being sort of noticeable, you know, in a
Yeah.
way.
I can relate to that. But like with cinema, when I watch a movie, I always feel like I'm there for the picture, you know?
Mm,
I okay, of course the actor is in their play, but the way it's filmed, and I know when we watch a movie with my husband and he's like, oh, I'm sure you like that frame. And I'm like, he knows me so well
wow.
because the photography, you know, the cinematography, this is what I always look at first. You know, the plot of the movie, of course, well, it is important, but most of the time, I'm like, oh yes, they filmed it like this. You know, this is so smart. That's a really good angle. Like this is what I
Yeah.
always look at, and he's like, oh, I'm sure you like that. I'm like, yeah, well,
It's so cool he says so because he's completely from another
no,
world, you know?
he's not into arts or into anything like that, but I think he knows me well. It's been many years that we're together, and
Beautiful.
this this is something that I cherish very dearly, this kind of moments, because these are small details, you know, but they sort of make up a much bigger picture at the end of the day. And that's really sweet as well.
Mm, it's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing it all.
No, it's always my pleasure. I mean,
It's huge, really inspiration how you're combining all the different aspects of your life in this whole picture. But you know, maybe at the point it feels really hectic, but it looks really whole.
I think my life is very hectic, but deep inside, I'm a very calm person. I'm very grounded. I'm very, well, I don't want to say I'm relaxed, but I am very sort of, I don't have those spikes, you know, up and down or mood swings or anything. I'm sort of like a straight line, you know, and I like things very, very down to earth, very humble. And I think this is what I try to portray with my work, with the pictures that I take. I don't like anything loud, you know, anything too crazy over the top parties or like, I mean, even the brands that I work with, I mean, yes, they are luxury brands. And I mean, everybody knows that. But for me personally, it's just, I feel like I can go from another angle and showcase these brands in different light, that they don't have to be perceived as, you know, out there in your face. It can be grounded, it can be calm, it can be
Subtle.
very sort of meek, you know. It doesn't have to always be like, oh, look at me, I'm wearing this is my outfit of the day. This, I mean, I don't judge people who do this, that's their thing. But for me personally, you know, it's just this sort of tiny detail that only those who really have the eye for it, they'll spot it, you know. But those who don't, it's absolutely fine, you know. But I know it's there, and maybe you know it's there. And this is what makes it interesting. This is what I sort of strive to do, because, I mean, again, that concept of quiet luxury, that I feel like that's something I can very closely relate to.
Me too.
Especially nowadays in a hectic world of overconsumption,
Too much information.
too much information. I mean, we
Yeah.
consume everything. We consume goods, we consume information, and we don't even pay attention anymore to what it is. Everything is disposable, and we go through stuff like, you know, weekly, monthly basis. And for me personally, that's not the way it should be. Or I can't relate to things like this.
Yeah, likewise.
I mean, if I know that a designer or a big house, they put so much effort into designing, say, handbag, and me just sort of, oh, you know, that's my other favorite handbag. It's just not me. I mean, I really want to say, oh, look, I know that your team has worked so much on it. I know how much time it takes to produce a really good design, let alone the design. I mean, you have to send it to good, skillful artisans who actually make the piece. That's hours and hours of work. And then I just go and be like, oh, you know,
knee back.
I can't do this. It just doesn't work that way for me. That's why I often take my time. Like, it can be 4 weeks, it can be, I don't know. But I'm like, okay, I'm really going to think about this. And what does it mean to me? What does it represent? What does it mean for the future of that brand? And it is obviously timeless piece, you know, if it's something that valuable. So it deserves the kind of recognition that it deserves.
Thank you so much for telling this.
But this is probably just, you know, people probably find this odd and weird, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this.
No, I mean, I feel the same way completely, you know. And if we're to exist, then maybe more people relate to this.
Yeah, I mean, I know everybody says, oh, you know, we should buy less and, like, you know, consume less.
Yeah, but you need to live this as well.
Beauty is charged. I'm also a living person. I mean, I know it's hard to resist very often, and we don't live in a cave or under a rock, you know. They are things that sort of we like to indulge in from time to time, and that's fine. But there are also moments when you have something that you know you will cherish and it's timeless. I mean, stick with it. It's nice to pay that tribute to a brand too.
Yeah.
And it goes for anything: jewelry, accessories, clothing. I mean, I don't even remember when I shopped for the last time, honestly.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, do you actually shop?
I hardly shop nowadays. There are pieces that I'm very generously gifted by brands that I keep and I wear. And big, like, substantial clothing items or footwear, I haven't really bought anything recent. I used to shop way more back in the day, but I think now my priorities shifted, and I just rewear things. I have quite a few pieces of old Celine from Phoebe Philo period, and I wear them over and over again, and they sort of make sense to me. And a couple of vintage pieces. And okay, I often feel kind of weird when I have to photograph something and I'm using the same coat over and over again. But then I'm like, okay, but isn't that what we talk about all the time? You know, sustainability. Well, here you go. That's my coat. I photographed it 10 times and I still love it, and it's beautiful. And maybe it looks similar to some of the stories that I've photographed before, but it's just the way it goes for me, you know. I have my 5 coats and I love them dearly. And they're not worn out, so I'm still keeping them.
Yeah, and sometimes you just restyle old clothes, and it's beautifully combined. It's a completely new outfit and new look.
Yeah.
And at some point, you just realize that you don't need much.
No.
Like, I don't really feel this urge, you know, to shop
constantly. To shop, yeah. From time to time, okay, maybe there's a piece that you've been really thinking about for years, and it's something that you feel like will add value to your wardrobe. That's fine. I mean, but for the rest, just for me, it doesn't make any sense anymore.
I'm so grateful, Miss.
It was a nice chat.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Thank you.